Have you felt in this new age of AI writing, like the thing you love most about being a creative is being taken away from you? You're not alone. Candidly, writing with AI can be amazing, but for many of us, we feel that the joy is the actual process itself. And if we're prompting and just getting out a book, the creativity can feel lost in that. Now, obviously, you know that I run a platform called Creatorwood, and we help folks turn their stories and books into movies and shows with AI. Clearly, I'm a proponent of AI, but what I'm really a proponent of is AI enhancing the creative process. And if we go into it with the right mindset, not only can AI enhance our writing process and all these other mediums, as we've discussed, but what you'll actually learn is that writing with AI or not, we actually have to unlock the joy in the writing process. And that joy in approaching writing from a joyful perspective is the thing that a lot of us lose inside of deadlines, inside of word count goals, inside of submitting manuscripts to agents or indie publishing. We can lose sight of the real goal, which is to tell a story that we love and to love the process of doing it. AI or not, that is what matters. And you are empowered to write in a way that works for you, and to approach this way, whole world of writing in a way that makes you find joy. Now, how do you actually do that? And how should you actually approach it? That's what we're going to be talking about today with Alexandra Nozillo. She's amazing. She just started this free online book club called Finish the Damn Book Club. So she's going to talk about that, talk about what inspired her, and how she approaches writing and communicating, because not only is she a fantastic writer, but she also ghostwrites for CEOs, for brands, and even was one of the communications leads while I was at Harvard. And she essentially literally was the person writing the emails during COVID that I would see from our dean, which is pretty hilarious because I didn't know that until I met her. And I was like, oh, wait, that was, I mean, it was you were writing in someone else's voice, but it was you writing it. And she was like, yeah. So she's amazing. Super grateful that she's here with us. And I think you're going to love this one. It's very grounding. And I think it's going to establish you in the space and mindset of what matters most as a creative person. Okay, I'll see you on the other end. Most writers think you either have to be a plotter or a pantser, but you don't think that's true. What's up there?
No, and thank you so much for having me on this podcast. This is so exciting. I've listened to a lot of Beyond the Book, and I know that there's a few different takes on it. So I have sort of three different concepts for you. And I am normally a very organized person. I am always very regimented, but when it comes to writing, I am just a mess. So I'm going to go along with the P's, right? So we have Picassoing, we have Pandemonium, and we have pathfinding. And I think those are probably the way that I like to write the most. So Picassoing, if you can imagine like Picasso, it's like intuitive, nonlinear, emotional, experimental, fragmented, but intentional. So like, for example, one of my rom-coms, I wrote half in first person and half in third person because I just wanted to like figure out what was going to work best. And I didn't realize like how messed up the plotting gets when like you can see behind certain people's eyes in third person, but like first person, that like note that the reader figures out, like if you change it to first person, they don't know about that. So now you have to like change the whole structure. And so that was sort of my Picassoing moment. Pandemonium, just like it sounds, it's like chaotic, spontaneous, energetic. It's like detours, tangents, sprints, what ifs. Like that is my writing where I'm doing it right now with the novel, where it's like I will be driving and I'll have this great idea and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to pull over, like type it out in my notes app. And like, so you have all this like fragmented stuff that you try and like put together. And then my favorite one, being a sailor, is pathfinding. So like imagine like you know where you want to go and you have a compass. You have the end in mind. Maybe you have like the dark night of the soul in mind near the end, like where everything falls apart. And maybe, one of my friends told me about a girl's trip she took, and that like sparked the beginning of one of my novels because I thought it was just hilarious. And so like you kind of have a beginning, middle, and an end. But you have a compass and you can explore, discover, and like navigate through it. So it's a little bit of pantsing, it's a little bit of plotting, but they're like kind of stuck together in a different kind of way.
Okay, wow. So how it sounds like you and it by proxy, like other writers too, like as I'm hearing these, I think I resonate with some of these at different moments. So is there like different parts of like your writing process where you're going to maybe be more of these types? And then also, how did you like come to know this? Like, is this something you came up with? Is this something that you learned? Because this is like interesting. I like the three Ps. Like three Ps are fun.
I think that the P's are fun. No, this is a great question because I'd love to hear like sort of what you do as well. But I think that different books, I take on different personalities. So like my first book, I was like a plotter, plotter, plotter. And I realized that I kind of went off the rails halfway through and had to like replot. And I just
Mm.
like every time there was like a tangent or a detour, I'd be on a run or I'd be in the shower. And I'm like, I kept like having to repeat things to myself so I wouldn't forget it. Cause I'm like, oh, this is such a great moment for it to change. Um, so for me, like when you're a writer and when you're in a writing group, often like one of the first questions people will ask you are like, are you a plotter or a pantser? And I'm like, I'm a ploopster or plotster or something, like I'm kind of in the middle. I'm like a hybrid. So that's where it came from, was like, I don't fit into these like, and I don't think the human experience fits nicely into any buckets. I think that you can be all the above. And so, yeah, like Picassoing, like I love to like think about stories. And I don't know about you, but like I think about stories for a really long time. I'm like a storyteller. I don't love writing, but I love storytelling. And so the Picassoing like is like that emotionally driven because like we love emotion, things that resonate. And then the Pandemonium is like the sprints and the writing. So I think that all three can coexist. I think all five probably can coexist. But my favorite is pathfinding, where it's like, okay, you have an idea. If you're using Save the Cat, The Hero's Journey, or something to give you some sort of navigational element, and how do you write to that next plot point, how do you write to that next place? And I think that that's fun to kind of work your way through. So to answer your question, yes, I use all of the above.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great way to approach it. Sometimes like it can feel like there's a rule book you have to follow, right? And that can constrict people and make it harder to like actually get going. And I'm curious for you, walk me back through like your writing journey. So I know that you might just mentioned like right now you're at like deep in one of your drafts, 60,000 words in, which is super exciting. But take me into what got you started writing and also leading the Finish the Damn Book Club, because that's also very fun endeavor.
Yeah, thank you. So growing up, you probably talk to a lot of writers who are like, I love this. I've always done this. And like, I was not a huge reader or writer growing up. Like I did, the family business was journalism. So I did a little bit of that with my parents. But
That's an
outside of like
interesting family
business,
business. Yeah. So it it's interesting you say journalism is the family business, and then that you love storytelling, because I mean journalism is storytelling at the end of the day.
true, true. And I think like the actual act of like sitting down and like typing was never something that I loved. And
Interesting.
so yeah, right? Like I just and like I think I could count on one hand the amount of books that I read for fun growing up. Like if it wasn't school and if it wasn't work, it was like I was outside, I was, you know, athletics and like, we're multi-hyphenate humans. And I think that I've suffered from too many interests my whole life. And so it was like I did that for school and I learned. But then the journey to finish the damn book club was that about a decade ago when my kids were little, I really wanted to instill in them the beauty of reading because I started to read books for fun. And like, it just like so my graduate work is in the lab and I worked with HeLa cells. And I always would be like, where did they come from? What human is this? Like, how did this happen? And I started doing research. And it was like sent from God that the Henrietta Lacks book came out around the time that I was in graduate school. And I was
Oh
just
wow.
like, I was so much more fascinated by the story of Henrietta Lacks than the cancer research that I was doing. And I was like, okay, like that's telling me something. So a few years later, when the kids came, I love books and I loved like little kid books. And there's this book, I don't know if you're familiar with kid books. There's Pete the Cat. And Pete the Cat, I think, is the most fun book because he or she, I think it's a dude, steps in so much. Like he steps in like different colored things and it turns his shoes different colors. And then like at the end of the book, you realize that like it doesn't matter what you step in because like all's just going to be groovy, right? And so with that, it kind of showed me that like not only can books be fun and interesting and like there's a sing-songy element to it, but it like there was also sort of the human experience that like it doesn't matter what you go through, but like just getting that through like a 10-page children's book, like I thought it was like hilarious, right? So um that really inspired me to just like we all have stories within us, and so a lot of my like early writing, which probably will never see the light of day, was terrible, awful. Like I even look back and I'm like, I'm embarrassed to write this, but it was processing like a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. During COVID, like I wrote a lot of stuff just for myself, and it wasn't about my anxieties, but it was more like, how to harness and cope and like, and then I read this really cool article about how anxiety, you can kill it or quell it with creativity. So I started like really focusing on fiction and really diving into fiction more. And it just like you take a stressful work situation, or you take like somebody that says something just ridiculous to you, or when life is crazier than fiction, and you include it in a way that's inspiring and funny and like goes in your storyline. And I think that it does something for mental health and well-being. And that's what I love about storytelling, is you can take like the crazy stuff from your life and incorporate it in a way that's just like really funny. So that said, my friend Stacy and I, we were like accountability buddies for writing for like the past year. And we'd meet and we'd discuss things. And then one day I was like, those silent book clubs? How come there's not like a silent writing club? And Stacey was like, yeah, we should do that. So we just like this November, we just threw together a website, and it's nascent and it's early, and we have really big plans for 2026 and growing our community even further. But we're just like accountability buddies and just lowering the bar, because everybody has a story to tell. Everybody who I talk to is like, this is so great. And when you break it down, it's just so much more fun to just, not have these rules and not have to be like trained in any kind of way, just telling your own story.
I love it. Yeah, no, first of all, it's uh there, I think we should go back a little bit because you mentioned the Henrietta Lacks story. And I think maybe some folks know it, but maybe not everyone does, because that is pretty significant to just understand like that power of storytelling. And then um, I think that seems like that was the moment for you when you realized that you're more than just, you're not going to just be in a lab. You're going to be a storyteller, which I think has really come true in your life in so many ways now. But like, tell everyone what Henrietta Lacks is, because I think I knew that as well, because I studied some science in college, so that was something that I loved. But a very interesting story. But for folks who maybe didn't know that story, what is that one?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So HeLa cells are cells that we use in the lab for so many huge discoveries are on these. So the book is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. And there's a big ethical question there and a lot of heartbreaking. I mean, I'm not going to give away the whole story, but essentially her cells were taken from her, and they were cancer cells, and they have lived for decades, almost close to 100 years. And I think it was, I want to say the 50s, around this time. So she was, a Black woman, and her cells were taken, and it was before a lot of the proper regulations for taking cells and using cells all happened. And so, it's heartbreaking on so many levels, but at the same time, like her cells have done such great for humanity. And I absolutely love that about her, that like it was just such, you know, it was sent to us in a way that wasn't necessarily great from a ethical perspective, but the outcome has just been saving so many lives. And for that, I'm deeply grateful to her and her family and everything like that. And it was a real inspiration, not the horrible part of it, but the really wonderful parts of it, that something that, her story was finally told and her narrative was out there in the right way. And that, the author, she really spent the time trying to talk to the right people and really digging out their true story. And, I now lean more towards fiction instead of that nonfiction level. But I think that it was really inspiring to hear the story behind the cells that I was using, and really, give my thanks and pay reverence to that for my thesis as well.
Yeah, no, that makes Makes a lot of sense. And it's a very powerful story. I think it's good that people have that context, because I think um, even in the world of fiction, like in science in particular, I like to think about Michael, right, who, like with Jurassic Park, most archaeologists, to my understanding, were inspired by him today. Like many professors, many graduate students are inspired by that book, obviously Jurassic Park. And I think it's just true that like uh, the, it's really all about the story at the end of the day, and reality and fiction like beyond influence each other. Like, life mimics fiction, but fiction also mimics life, and it goes back and forth. But you mentioned something that's interesting, because you said you don't like typing. So you are someone who's writing, but you don't actually love the act of writing itself, it sounds like. How do you cope with that,
Yeah.
especially when you're talking about writing tens of thousands of words?
Yeah. So this is in my experimentation column. So creativity at its best is really, really messy, and mine is exceptionally messy. So like when I say I wrote 60,000 words, like it's all over the place. But now I finally, like this week, got it into a Word draft. But my first two novels, which have yet to be published soon, I'm hoping, I wrote them completely by hand, 100% by hand, pen and paper, every night, just like a couple pages. Both wrote them in writing sprints, but it was like, I kind of did out the math. It was like, a page of my handwriting is about 350 words. And like, I wanted the chapters to be about 3,500
Yeah.
words. So it was like 10 pages. Um, so I wrote them by hand, which is, I don't
Wow.
recommend. Your hand hurts, it
I
cramps.
just I now understand why you don't like writing. Like, I don't know if I'd love writing that much either. Handwriting it.
And then, so yeah, this time around, oh, that's a great point. This time around, I've been doing a lot of dictating in second person. So it's like my character does this, and then this happens, and then this happens. So I'm like, it's like telling a campfire story. So like the other two novels, like I wrote them by hand and then I dictated them in, and I used, Dragon and played around with a bunch of different things in Word and all of that. And that was fun. But I think that right now I'm working on like typing like random like blurbs, and then like later going back and like fleshing it out. But my favorite, like what I've been doing to really get a high word count right now, is literally typing like, and then my protagonist does this, and then so and so does this, and then I'll just write the conversation without grammar. And I've been playing around a little bit with AI for like saying like, okay, go in and move this paragraph to first person for me. And so that's been interesting. It doesn't do it quite well because it's like, from this perspective or from that perspective. And so that doesn't work just yet. So it's a little bit more cleanup, but I can put together, like, I'm very plot heavy. And I know that when I'm like talking to you or talking to a friend and I'm like, telling them about gossip for the day or something like that. And I'm like, and then this happened, and then this happened. And it's really easy to like talk that way. So you can like tell a story pretty quickly, which is a lot of fun. So that's what I'm experimenting with this time around. So there is a little bit more cleanup, but like, I can't tell you how many times like I sit with like the cursor blinking or a blank screen on Word and I'm like, I don't know what to type. So I need to like do other things.
No, I've honestly been leaning more and more towards that too. Especially trying to take away the notion that for years when I would write, I'd sit down at my desk and I'd have to, do my writing exercise in one chapter at a time. It was very regimented. And I think it was effective because I was disciplined, but it was not as fun as I wanted it to be. And it actually led to burnout a lot sooner than I would have liked. Of course, I was writing a lot. I was writing maybe actually writing close to 20 or 30 hours a week at least. And with that, like, came back pain. It just wasn't like a great thing. And I was like literally a teenager. So I I'm right with you that like part of this is about giving yourself the freedom to like break the quote unquote rules, that whatever rules you think there are about how you should, and the process, and just making things happen. Like for me, I realized that whenever I hit writer's block, I would always go for a walk. Always. Like if I was
Mm.
stuck, had that blank page and that cursor just, it's not fun when it keeps ticking. You're just like, all right, I know, making me self conscious now. But when that happened, I would always go for a run. But then I decided, like, why am I like being super creative on my runs? Because like it's just my mind enjoys that. The endorphins just get my creativity flowing. And then I'm sitting down and that creativity that was in that run now has been zapped. So like, yes, I can now get started because I had that cool idea on that run. But wouldn't it be nicer to just somehow like speak into your phone and take some messy notes? And it's not going to look like a beautiful page of prose, obviously, but like that's still like making progress and being creative. Um, Now that's what I do, and it's a lot better. I'm able to like have a lot more fun being creative. So I like how you say that. Like you, writing is almost to consider yourself a writer as like an identity label. Like you are a writer, but to it seems like you primarily consider yourself a storyteller first. Is that right?
Yeah. I think that we're all writers, right? Because we're like putting words on paper technically. But I
In the
love to
day,
be
yeah.
thought of as like a experimenter when it comes to like word art or like a storyteller, like that's more sort of up my alley.
Now, I will say something that's very interesting because it when people think about writing and the art of it, and then think about sharing their writing with the world, those two things can feel very divorced, and it can feel very scary to share your writing with the world. Yet you do this all the time because you literally are a communications professional, and uh, like I don't know if you can talk specifically about some of the people that you do communications for, but you work with um, very prominent people whose messages and the stories they're telling, even if it's not long form fiction, are told to many hundreds of thousands of people oftentimes. Sometimes it makes headlines and millions of people see it in the news. This is what you do during your days, and that is
Hmm.
first of all like very very fascinating that one that you actually still want to keep telling stories at night. I feel like sometimes people when they have something that like if I was like spending 24/7 just like in the land of communication, because writing is communication at the end of the day, I might not I might want to do like a different hobby. I might want to like crochet, or I might want to like kickbox or something, right? But I mean, clearly
Hmm.
you love this. You found your zone. But I'm curious from all your experience, helping, whether it's on through email or on social media, helping like essentially like public leaders communicate better. What have you learned about being able to communicate your own writing through the world? Because I'm sure you're thinking through when you're getting around to publishing and how you're going to be sharing your own stories with the world. I'm sure there's a few learnings there
Hmm.
that are interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of learning. So, I mean, ghostwriting is fun because it's not your name on it and you get to like play in somebody else's voice. And I actually think that that helps my fiction writing because like you can really build out robust characters if you can like put your brain into somebody else's like thoughts, right? So like, when you're a ghostwriter, like they will tell you their thoughts and you'll then help as a thought partner even bolster what their brand and their vision is even more and sort of like what is your audience and what are your goals. And I always go back to that. And I think it helps my fiction writing a lot, but like yes, my day job is a lot of fun. I'm really proud of the work that I communications at Harvard College, where you're an alum. It's been just an incredible opportunity because I think that the students are amazing, and I love the mission of it. So I'm truly driven by the mission to help students find where they're supposed to be and their transformative journey and contributing their talents and skills to the world. But also like, it's interesting that you say that you might have a different hobby if you did communications all day. And I think that it speaks to how much fun it is to work with such brilliant minds and such brilliant students and just like a great community that gives you energy rather than zaps it. So I think that just like finding the right job for your day job, because I think that if I did writing full time, I think I'd be kind of bored because I use a lot of the crazy things. Something will happen on the commute, or maybe you'll say something crazy in a meeting and it'll get me thinking and I'll start looking something up. And I'm like, oh, and then I go rabbit holing and I'm like, oh, that would be really funny. So I think that it adds to a really wonderful, harmonious life when you have a job that you have great coworkers, you have a great mission, and it's something that you can believe in and doesn't detract your energy. Like it doesn't take away your energy. It just livens you up. And I have great student workers who have these amazing creative ideas for the work that we do. And so that's been a lot of fun too. I think being in this area where everybody's innovating and having ideas and having creativity really gives me energy. But then also, I'll go to an exhibit or learn something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that would make something great for fiction. And so you get exposed to all of these things at such a great university that you didn't think of otherwise, that might rabbit hole you down some other path into a rom-com that has no relation to what you actually learn, but you might end up there just researching. So yeah, I think it's really great. And I'm really proud of the work that we do. And I think that most of all, as a communications professional, the less you see my sort of like who I am in it, the better, because I talk, we speak for the institution rather than who we are. And I think that some writers might struggle with that. And I find it really fun to try and be, the voice and work towards that. So that's definitely a skill that I've tried to hone is be, other people's and the institution voice, which is fun. But on the flip side, that also means that I don't have my voice anywhere else. And so that's why this is exciting, is because, I have very regimented ways in which we have best practices that we have to talk about, or the mission or the vision or the goals. And so things that like I'm interested in looking into, working on, that becomes something that I get to do in my hobby time and gives me energy to be creative and think outside the box. So I think that it has, also, like you said, going into publishing, like I am scared to get my words out there. I've had a lot of beta readers who love what I've done. And there's a ton of writer colleagues that I've gotten to read their work too, because like, oh my gosh, just the creativity is just incredible. And so I definitely I have so many people who will send me things and like, hey, I wrote this, will you read it? And I just absolutely love that now. I am a big listener to books. And so if somebody sends me something, I'll probably have it read to me, even through like the very electronic sounding Word or Adobe. But I just absolutely love learning about other people's creativity. So yeah, it's pretty scary to getting your stuff out there. How have you dealt with that? Because you have a lot of books that are out there.
Yeah, it was it's funny because when you say speaking for you want to get your voice out there, but it's nice when you get to not have it explicitly be your voice and you can be the voice of something or someone else. I think for a lot of us, myself included, for a very long time, that would have been way more comfortable for me. For instance, pen names, I think are great for that reason, because you can almost create a character into itself, which is the pen name that then you speak through, that I'm sure channels some of you, but also could adopt things that aren't you either. I've seen pen names. One of them is from this author named Jack Steen. He's a horror author. And I won't say whether it's real or not, but I would presume it's a great story that they are a nurse in a ward in essentially an asylum where people are going to die or something. That's like their actual background story as a storyteller. They're sharing the stories they've heard from people as they're about to die, like on their deathbed, through their life, like the horrors they committed to get them there. Now, mind you, it's a pen name, meaning it's not a real name. It is, and maybe that's for privacy reasons, which makes sense. But it also might not be. That's the rumor, right? We don't know. And I will say that that's an example, but I know many other authors who do have pen names with these stories. Some of them are real, some of them are not. So you can create fake stories about who you are, and because it's fiction, right? At the end of the day, it's not like you're trying to entertain people. You're trying to build this world that you've created, and you can become part of the fiction in a sense. That to me, probably would have been a lot more comfortable, because in high school I kind of didn't realize that you could do that and the pen name thing. So I thought, oh yeah, I'll just publish under my name. But I was really scared to have people in my school find out that it was me who wrote these books. So I didn't really tell anyone. But then what ended up happening is they did find out, and some of the kids read it, and it was mortifying for me because I thought everyone was going to think it was bad, and maybe whatever they thought. They did. It was a rumor that the main protagonist in it was my ex-girlfriend. Like that was the rumor, which was not even true. I wrote it before I met her. So there was a 0% chance that could have happened. And I was like, no, this kind of stinks. All I could say is like, I've had people like laugh to my face about like my writing and like make up weird rumors about why I wrote books, which is like not even true. And, at some point you just go like, I love this thing. I'm going to keep doing it. And it doesn't really matter what other people say. And it's like, it's scary to like actually have that happen. But coming from the experience where it happened, like at the end of the day, like I was happy I wrote the book. What they think at the end of the day doesn't really matter. And I think, it maybe is different if you have like a family member, a partner, someone who's really, really close to you, who's not supportive. I think I haven't been in that position. And I think that could be rough. That could definitely be rough. But if it's just people in the world you're worried about, I think they matter remarkably less. When I was at Mr. Beast too, I joined the week before he got quote unquote canceled, and that was a whole mess. And I'm sure as someone who is spending one of the hats you put on is a PR hat, which I guess we all do, but especially you. That probably would be an interesting event to be behind the scenes for. But all I'll say is that our best performing video ever, like on the Beast channel, at least up to that point, was published soon after the cancellation. It had nothing to do with the cancellation. Meaning like most people just, the core fans, I don't know if they really even cared. And there was a lot of people talking very loud, but it wasn't the majority. And I think that oftentimes is what we're scared of. Like, we're scared of the minority of people who like actually are going to like make a stink about things or actually like make you uncomfortable in whatever that way is. And that doesn't make what they're doing right, but it probably says a lot more about them, first of all. And second of all, it's like still a minority of people. Like most people are frankly just not going to care. And the people who do care, you'll be surprised at how many people actually are supportive. And there's not as much to fear, I think, as people think getting their writing out there. Like, what's the worst that could happen? I think the worst that could happen is that a story that could help someone remains in your hard drive. And that story could like entertain someone, give them a new perspective, and you're not going to share it. So it's, mind you, it's not every story is written to be shared. But if you want to share it, if that's a desire of yours, I think you should. And I know that's something you do too in your silent writing club, the book club for writers. I know you do like at the end, like you, which is kind of crazy because you've been having like, it sounds, because I'm like, you could go to the website, click the Zoom link and join the meeting, essentially. Like anyone can, which I guess I'm saying like you go to the link and do that in the description. So anyone could just show up to the Zoom meeting, essentially. And then at the end, they can share their writing. And presumably there's strangers coming into it for the most part. How has that gone? Because that to me feels like a very like, that still sounds pretty scary.
Yeah. And I actually somehow, like you said, like it's easier to share with strangers, and they've been like really supportive, but also like very honest, which is really cool. So, Stacy and I divide up the silent writing sessions, so it's just an hour here and there. And she actually finished a novella for the first set of our silent writing sessions, which I'm so proud of her. So, her book is now on Amazon. I'm so proud of Stacy, and she published it. And so, and I, like I said, I'm, 60,000 or so words into my next novel, which I'm not going to tell too much about because I don't know what the ending or anything is going to be because it's still a mess. But it's just, it's been a great session where it's like an hour here, an hour there. And I don't love sharing my stuff because it's typically messy. But I do because other people do as well. So, it's nascent. It's a small group right now, but we're definitely excited about growing. But people have shared the coolest ideas, and the creativity is off the charts. And I truly believe that like people have tons of stories to share within them, not only from their life, but like they're just their creativity and the worlds they build. And like, I'm particularly in love with the stories when people share as like, I felt underestimated and there's this empowerment journey. And a lot of the stories are about that, about the underestimated and the empowerment. And then, like there was somebody who shared about the hero of their story all along, and this protagonist kind of didn't know. And I think that that's a theme that goes in through a lot of our writing, but also like the puzzles of stories is a lot of fun. And it keeps me wondering, like, how are they going to fit that all together? So, they'll just share like a couple hundred words about what they worked on or what they're thinking about next. And so I'm always curious, like, how are they going to write themselves out of that wall that they backed themselves into? And so I just like the creativity is so much fun. And I love hearing about what other people are writing about. And like some of the worlds that people build, like, I'm like, how did you come up with that idea? Because it's like really cool. And so I think that, it's very human. And I don't think that like AI can come up with all of these crazy ideas, right? But I think it's very human to come up with all this creativity. And I just love that. And I love that human condition that, you'll hear this wild story, 10 steps later, it led to this idea. So those are always my favorite things about the book club. But yes, it is daunting sharing, but it's also a lot of fun. And I've had people read my books and say like, oh, that's not right, or change that. And I love the constructive feedback. Like that's my favorite part. And so, we open it up to questions if they want, but so far everybody's just been like really celebratory and supportive in the process.
That's so interesting because I think a lot of my life and even the podcast has been colored by I very early on found that you could turn writing into a career. So I got so fascinated by that. I think what I have to constantly remind myself is that that's not how I got into writing. You don't think about writing from that perspective of like, the Amazon bestseller list and the querying the publishers. That's not necessarily the beginning. And I think what I found time and time again, actually, among folks in the community who have started to try and turn it into a career, whether it's traditional or indie, is that path can really burn you out if you're not grounding yourself in the actual love of the writing first and the process of the writing first. So it sounds like this community is like grounded in that first. And that's important because I think so many other communities, mind you, like communities I've ran and been a part of myself, I think like something that can be over indexed on is like, okay, well, we're here to make this a career. But it's like, yeah, but like we can also do a career doing anything. So like the reason we're doing this is because it has to be about the play and the fun of it. Because otherwise, like there's probably easier ways to make money. And we've seen that actually now that AI is making it easier to create things, especially when it comes to other media formats that weren't accessible, like movies and shows. I'd say most people who are getting into making movies and shows aren't thinking about it from the perspective, oh, I want to turn it into a business. I think it's something that can be, and it's something that's useful and it's interesting. But most people just have something that they want to share and just want to play and have fun. And I think that's really beautiful. That's been something for me that this last, let's call it 3 to 4 months, I've had to like relearn because I knew that. I think we all knew that. But now it's like seeing it in a sort of different way is it is quite powerful. And I'm curious for you because when you talk about these stories of empowerment, I oftentimes think about like writing is the type of thing where oftentimes the people who need it most do it the least for whatever reason, time, access, knowledge, not lack of ability, but more so just, hey, like what do I do? Where do I go? Right. But we obviously are living in a day and age now where, I mean, the computer has obviously greatly, as long as you have a computer, you have like access to a lot of knowledge and resources. You can join your Zoom, right? Like that's pretty cool. So like we're living in a world now where things are more accessible, and AI is one of those things that also has a lot of other things about that technology. It would be wrong to say that it's only, one way to look at the technology is empowering. A lot of other folks view it as a disempowering thing. Obviously, I think everyone listening to the podcast knows my take, but I'm curious how you, because you mentioned before that you've used AI in your process. How do you view AI in your writing process, and how do you view it in the writing community you're starting?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And I think that, AI grows every day, every week, every month. There's something new we're learning about LLMs. I use AI in so many parts of my life. Um, I think that so it's helpful on a couple levels. Firstly, I love like Grammarly for, like editing, because to me, like grammar is more of a art form rather than rules. And so I love to sort of learn like, what did I actually abide by and what is actually there. So it's helpful in terms of the LLMs. I think that they're useful. I've used them as a thought partner, but actually I'm finding that it's more like a talk therapy. So like I'll type in my prompt, and as I'm typing in my prompt, I'm actually realizing that I'm kind of working out the problem for myself. And then it'll come back with some ideas and I'm like, well, that sucks. And this is why it sucks. And that helped me think through what I actually wanted. So I don't really use what it turns out, but it's more for an exercise of like, okay, let me see if I can do better than them. Like, let me one up the AI. So maybe I'm terrible at prompting, possible. Or I think that I always think back to AI is trained on a certain level. And so it's not going to come up with those like new ideas, and it's not going to like stick like seven things together that are in my brain, like this meets this meets this, and I'm trying to go for this idea. Now it's fabulous for I can't find the right verb. So I put in a sentence and I'm like, I can't figure out the right verb like for this word, and like this is what I'm thinking of, and it'll come up with a list of verbs for me, and that's like awesome. Or like I'm trying to find the right word, or like I'm like, this needs to be more compelling, and like I'm like struggling with that, and it'll like give me some ideas. So like that's really great. But something I actually did with my new novel that I'm playing with, because I'm like, maybe I could use AI to like help make it even better, or like help do something. So I was just playing with the first chapter. And so after I wrote the first chapter for this book, I went in just like, because for every chapter, I kind of like make my, like when you start dictating a lot, you just start to like make an outline of like, these are the scenes, these are the beats, just so you can talk through it. So I just put in the prompt, like what I like drew from to make my first chapter, right? It's like 3,000 words. And I prompted it like I thought that would sort of match what I did. And it came up with something wildly different. And it was just a good exercise in realizing that it didn't understand how to set up my plots, set up my subplots. It doesn't understand the nuance of emotion, like the meet cutes and the meetings. Like it doesn't have all of that there. And so it was like, here are all the things that I need to set up. Here are all the things that I need to start later on. And it went in a totally different direction that I didn't like and wasn't my voice. So it was a great exercise in that it was sort of like a one-track mind versus thinking about all the human condition to make it a reality for me. So it was great and had some fun ideas, but it wasn't me. So I think that was helpful. The other thing I love it for, and you probably use it for this too, is research. Research is amazing. So in the past, you'd Google and you'd get a ton of sites and you have to dig through it. But now like you can as a researcher and me, you just like go through and it has like all the links to things and it points you in the right direction. And then you can like do a bunch of other searching too. But research has been really helpful, especially for fiction, because you're like, okay, I'm like, a lot of what I'm doing for like the rom-com now is like there's some historical aspects and ancient aspects that's really fun, but things that I don't know. So I'm like, what are some great nonfiction biographies that I can read about to make this sort of jog some ideas and link to historical aspects? And it came up with a list of like 3 books, and I'm like, this is great. So I think from those perspectives it's really great, but I'm curious of where it's going to go for creativity.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting. I fully agree with you that for writing in particular, it can be a great thought partner. And I think sometimes what can be very challenging is you don't have anyone to get you out of circles and spirals you can go in your mind. And it might feel like annoying to like, oh, I'm always bugging this person. Which first of all, like it's great to have writing buddies as well. And having writing groups is very important. But it's also that other thing when it's like 1 a.m. and you are putting the words in and you would like a response from someone right now. And it's probably a little bit overkill to someone to call. This is an option. It's interesting. Now, I'm curious for you how you actually approach when someone comes into your writing club and you have 50 minutes, right, to write, and then you share what you're doing. There's been a lot of debate and topics around should writing communities be opinionated and only allow human writers? Should they allow AI? To what extent do they allow AI? What is it like in your writing community that if I show up to the silent writing club, when you say finish the damn book, right? Like, what does that mean? How am I supposed to?
Wait, I didn't hear the end of your question. Sorry.
Oh yeah. Essentially, when you say like finish the damn book club, right? What ways am I able to finish this book? Am I able to do it with AI or not, and why?
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts on this, but it's such an evolving area, because I think that AI is extraordinarily useful on so many levels. And I struggle with it on the creativity level because I think, so for me, I love bringing back the artesian art, if you will, of just like word smithing and word crafting. And so if somebody wants to use AI, like totally go for it. It's fabulous. I think it can be really useful depending. On the flip side, like, I know that when I write and when my brain is being creative, like my heart rate drops, my HRV goes up, like all those telltale signs of like flow state and relaxation happen. And so, I write for health and I write for creativity and I write to quell anxiety about the world because I feel like we live in a dystopian novel sometimes. And so I think that if somebody wants to use AI because it's part of their process, like go for it. Hopefully they'll like utilize their own creativity and use AI in unique ways that aren't just like it writing completely for you. But I'm not against it. I think that we have a lot to learn about it. And I know that a lot of institutions of higher education are learning how to use it best. And, I had the dean of the college has talked a lot about AI and he's worked with OpenAI a lot. And he used an analogy recently about a bicycle and about, when you're using a bicycle for exercise, you don't want an e-bike, right? But when you're using, when you really want to get far and get a lot done and do it in ways that's like really beneficial, like jump on the e-bike and get there because it can help you. So I think that there's different use cases. I don't think we know enough just yet, but like, you're doing some really great stuff in the arena of AI that I think could be really beneficial. And so, I love learning more about like full self-drive and how it can be safer for people in different ways, especially at night and nighttime driving when some people's eyes don't work, and I think that so it's like I like to think of it as like helping humans versus a drawback. But I just, when it comes to creativity, there's something about, AI doesn't know the type of day I had or the emotions or like as of right now. And so I don't know what the future holds, but I think that there's a lot of potential and possibility as in different aspects right now. So definitely like not against it, but I think that there's a lot of benefits to, human creativity for health and happiness and also just sharing stories that resonate with other people. Cause I can't tell you how many times that I can tell when an email was written by AI and it just doesn't resonate.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, it's a big deal. And I think the biggest thing is like, be kind of weird to say, it's about the intention. But if your intention is to love the writing process, then working with AI in a way in which it helps you or enables you to enjoy it. But it would be also quite odd if it was like, yeah, I love eating food, super tasty dinner. I'm just going to take a pill. It's going to give me all the nutrition. I'm not going to eat it all.
Yeah.
That would not be a fun endeavor. I think most of us would say, no, I think we'd rather eat dinner. And maybe there's ways that technology can help the food be healthier or better or all these different things, but not everyone wants to automate eating dinner. And I think that's probably true for most folks with writing too. And I think it's a very healthy approach to think, how do I keep this healthy for me first? And then every other question is downstream of that.
Yeah. And I really think that you can tell the joy when somebody writes. Like, I can't tell you how many times that, like, I've written a chapter and I hate it. I just, like, throw it out because I'm like, I don't care to edit this. So I don't think the writer would like reading it. But
Yeah.
to your point about the joy and health, like, I mean, as you probably know, if I haven't brought it up before, like, I'm an avid gardener. And, like, it is really easy to go to the store and buy myself some broccoli and come home and cook it, right? It is actually probably easier to like buy myself frozen broccoli that's already washed and I can just like throw it throw it in and heat it up with something. But there's something so satisfying about in the middle of February, planting a seed in dirt in my, in my house and watching it sprout and putting it under the light, the right conditions and the right food. And then all of a sudden, like, for Thanksgiving, we are harvesting Romanesco for our dinner table that we started like months before, right? Like almost like a year ago, like February, March, April. So there's some kind of joy that goes with like creating something and growing something from yourself that you can't get by just like, it's not cheating by any means, right? Because some people need to go to the store and need sustenance and don't have land to grow. And it is a huge privilege to be able to like grow your own food. And like, it's just, I'm in awe. But I think that creativity is the same way, that when somebody does something that is just incredible, and I'm like, how did you think of that? Like, that is so cool. And I think of that with like growing things from seed is like, it's so special. And so that's something that, like you said, like AI has its place, and I think it's tremendous. And, it will help us do things far beyond what we potentially ever thought imaginable. And that's awesome. But I think there is something about our minds that we need creativity, and it needs to resonate. And at least not right now. You can't replicate that in any way.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. Yeah. This is just like, that's a great way to think about it. And I think as well, like people can feel very, like when change is happening, people can feel very up in arms because it's like, well, what can I do? And I think regardless of how you want to incorporate these evolving technologies into your life and into your process, especially as a writer, one thing is true, that you should protect your health. And whatever that looks like, there's no wrong answer to. But you should protect your health, protect your joy. And if that means like having a garden, that's great. If it means not having a garden and going to the farmer's market, that's great. If it means going and getting, microwave broccoli as well, which like certainly that can be me many times, that is also okay too. There's not necessarily like a wrong way. I don't think, especially because these things are like, it's not like you're being destructive to anyone else by like, oh, she has her garden. Like, this is such a terrible thing. Like, what are the neighborhood's up in arms? So you really do get to make a personal choice here. And I think it's similar to that whole discussion we started off with, which is, the Picassoing, the pathfinding, the Pandemonium, right? How you actually go about your writing process is really something that can change and evolve, and is up to you. This is beautiful, Alexandra. I love chatting with you. And if folks want to join the Finish the Damn Book Club, where can they go?
Yeah, so it's finishthedamnbookclub.com. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. And you just click in, join a session. It's all free. We want people to harness their creativity and just find joy in sharing their stories. So, stay tuned. We have a big year coming up in 2026. More silent writing sessions together, more community support. And also we're going to start to put together some more areas for people to grow and link and learn together on how to continue to keep this art form alive in all the forms that it takes and all the joy that it gives.
So awesome. That'll be linked down in the description. So y'all feel free to join. And thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is amazing. Thanks, Michael.
All right. Thank you all so much for being here. That was such a fun podcast. Then recording this literally right as I'm about to head home for the Christmas holidays. I was in New York with our team, and we've been making an AI musical with an amazing Broadway composer. His name's Jonathan Briel. He's even been on this channel. And we've been experimenting really to help pioneer a whole genre that can get musicals kickstarted. So just a ton of fun. And I'm very grateful for you all, this whole community, for making what we're doing here at Creatorwood possible. We're in the early days of a mission to bring power back to storytellers, to help storytellers like you rule the world. And we're super excited to be able to help create the technology, build the ecosystem, and be at the center of this community. It's just so much fun. Now, I hope that in all of this, you've realized what our goal is with not only this podcast, but everything we're doing, which is honestly to help you have fun. Like, yes, I think there's lots of cool things with AI that you can produce that can make money and build businesses, and I hope you do that. But at the end of the day, all of this is supposed to be about you and also your viewers having a great time. So it starts with you enjoying the process of using the movie machine, enjoying the process of telling stories. And this was an important, honestly, conversation for me and helping ground me in that, because that's so important for me to always remember as we try to help you create awesome things. With that said, we'll see you all next time. You can always go to creatorwood.tv to join the platform. You can get our free book at blog.creatorwood.tv/subscribe, all about this movie making revolution happening with AI. All that said, have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, don't forget, storytellers rule the world.